Black CEO, forced out of VIP seat for white passenger. They froze when he fired everyone. On the spot. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. The shout came before the wheels of the jet even locked into the boarding bridge. "Sir," I said, "move. That is not your seat." Her voice sliced through the calm hum of the cabin like metal tearing. Heads snapped up in unison, businessmen in pressed shirts, influencers half posing for selfies, a couple whispering over champagne. Every pair of eyes swung toward row 2, seat A, where a black man sat tall, composed, hands folded loosely over a leather carry-on. The lead flight attendant stood over him, jaw clenched. Her name badge caught the cabin light, a cold glint under the sharp blue LEDs. Behind her, a white passenger huffed impatiently, tapping his Rolex on the armrest of the aisle seat he had claimed as his queuing ground. "This gentleman is assigned to this seat," she insisted, stabbing a finger toward the white passenger. "And you," her tone dipped, scorn curling around the words "you people" always try to slip into premium rows. A ripple. Soft, quick, ugly. The kind of half-laugh, half-gasp people make when they expect escalation, not justice. Phone cameras rose like periscopes. The cabin felt smaller, tighter, a pressurized box of voyeurism. Row 1 turned. Row 3 too. The hum of the engines, once gentle, seemed to pulse under the tension. The black man didn't move. Not even a twitch. He simply looked up at her, calm, posture aligned, expression unreadable. "Mom," he said quietly, voice level as polished steel. "This is my assigned seat." She scoffed a sound sharp enough to cut through fabric. "Don't make this difficult. Your ticket is clearly economy. I don't know how you got up here, but let's not turn this into a scene." Behind her, the white passenger leaned forward and chimed in, wearing the smirk of someone who had never once been denied anything in a public space. "Yeah, sweetheart, just let me sit. I've got a tight connection." More murmurs. A businessman whispered loudly enough to be heard. "He probably just wandered up here during pre-boarding." Another chuckled. "Happens all the time." The man in seat A lifted his eyes again. One slow blink, nothing else. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here." Now, back to Marcus. A second attendant approached, holding a tablet. Her tone was smoother, but coated in the same quiet condescension. "Sir, we can help you find your actual seat. It's likely a misunderstanding." She angled the tablet away so he couldn't see it. "Maybe next time, purchase the correct class to avoid confusion." Someone in row 3 snickered. Marcus Ellington, though none of them knew his name, yet exhaled once, slow. The kind of breath that didn't signal anger, but patience thinning to its final thread. He reached calmly into the inside pocket of his blazer and retrieved his boarding pass. He held it up without a word. The attendant didn't even look at it. She waved it away. "Sir, those can be faked. We have procedures for this. Please stand." A beat of silence. Thick, heavy. Then a voice older, smug, rose from across the aisle. A man in a blazer, the color of a storm cloud, leaned back and muttered, "People like him always try to upgrade themselves." The attendant's eyes hardened. "Stand! Up! Now!" Marcus stood, not in anger, not in surrender, but slowly, deliberately, like a man rising to his full height, not because he was told to, but because he had decided the moment required it. He stepped into the aisle. The attendant gestured triumphantly toward the white passenger. "Sir, go ahead and take your rightful seat." The man brushed past Marcus with a satisfied, dismissive pat on his shoulder, a gesture that froze half the cabin. Marcus didn't react, not outwardly, but the cabin felt the shift. A subtle drop in temperature, a tightening of air pressure, like the quiet before a storm no instrument could detect. The lead attendant crossed her arms and snapped, "Next time." Please stay in your designated area. A woman near the window whispered, "He didn't deserve that." Someone else whispered back, "Well, he shouldn't pretend to belong." Marcus' gaze swept the cabin, moving from face to face, absorbing every smirk, every smothered laugh, every phone lens aimed at him like a trigger pulled halfway. And for the first time since the confrontation began, something flickered behind his eyes, not heat, but clarity. Cold, precise, the kind of clarity that precedes consequence. He reached for his phone. His thumb hovered over one contact. One message away from turning this entire aircraft and everyone watching into a lesson no one on this flight would ever forget. For a moment, the cabin didn't move. It was as if the entire aircraft had slipped into a pocket of suspended time. Engines hummed beneath the floor, steady and indifferent, but inside the cabin the atmosphere thickened, an invisible weight pressing down on every row. Marcus remained standing in the aisle, phone in hand, but he didn't type. Not yet. He simply breathed, letting the moment stretch until the silence became uncomfortable for everyone except him. The flight attendant who'd ordered him out of the seat straightened her uniform and stepped aside, suddenly unsure of her posture now that she no longer had a target to push. Her confidence hung in the air like perfume that had begun to fade. The white passenger slid into the premium seat with a self-satisfied sigh, leaning back like a man settling into a victory he believed he had earned. Finally, he muttered, tugging the seatbelt across his lap, "Some order around here." A woman in row 1 kept her phone trained on Marcus. The red recording dot reflected faintly in her glasses. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "This is going viral already." She wasn't wrong. 3 rows back, a teenager refreshed his feed twice, then murmured, "Dude, number VIP seat trending in real time." But none of them understood what they were actually capturing. The narrow beams of cool-toned cabin lights illuminated everything: the polished armrests, the brushed metal of the overhead bins, the tension carved into people's faces. Marcus noticed each detail the way someone might take stock of a battlefield, quietly, methodically. He moved a step toward the front galley, and the entire first-class cabin followed his motion. Eyes, cameras, judgment all pulled toward him like he was a gravitational force the room wasn't prepared to orbit. The second flight attendant reappeared from the galley, tablet clutched tighter now. She tried a different tone, softer, polite in a way that didn't reach her eyes. "Sir, look, we're trying to maintain a pleasant boarding experience. If you'll just take a seat in the back, we can depart on time." She smiled, the thin, strained smile of someone who wants credit for courtesy without offering any. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You want me to go to the back?" "It's the only option we have," she said. "Besides, business class is fully booked." A man 2 seats over nodded approvingly. "Makes sense. Priority is priority." Another chimed in. "Hez, lucky they're not calling the captain." Marcus looked at them all, letting their words land exactly where they belonged, out in the open with no protection. The lead attendant stepped closer. "Sir, refusing to comply could lead to consequences. I'm sure you understand." The irony nearly stung the air. Marcus slid his phone into his palm and glanced at the screen. One contact, Rachel, operations director of the airline. A woman who moved millions with a single signature. He didn't call her, not yet. What struck the cabin most wasn't what he did, it was what he refused to do. He didn't argue, didn't plead, didn't try to justify. His silence pressed harder than any raised voice. Someone from row 5 shifted uncomfortably. Why isn't he saying anything? Because Marcus didn't need to. He walked toward the bulkhead wall, separating first class from the galley. The faint tremor of turbulence vibrated beneath the soles of his shoes, but his steps remained steady. He paused underneath a row of recessed lights that cast a halo-like glow across his shoulders. For a fleeting second, passengers might have sworn he looked like a man about to deliver a verdict. The lead attendant, sensing something beyond her script, hesitated. "Sir, where exactly are you going?" Marcus turned his head slightly, just enough for her to see the shift in his eyes, a shift from acceptance to decision. "I'm giving you one more chance," he said, voice steady, almost gentle, "to correct what happened." Every breath in the cabin tangled together. Nobody dared exhale. The attendant swallowed. "And if we don't?" Marcus slid his thumb across the screen. The message window opened, one press away. "One thing about consequences," he said quietly. They never come when you think they will. The temperature of the cabin seemed to drop another degree. The storm was no longer coming. It had already arrived, and none of them knew it yet. The moment Marcus' thumb hovered above the screen, something subtle but unmistakable shifted inside the aircraft. Not a sound, not a word, just pressure, as though the air itself realized it had chosen the wrong side. The lead flight attendant took half a step back, her heel brushing the edge of the carpet strip that separated the polished business-class flooring from the utilitarian galley. She tried to stand tall, but her spine wasn't listening. A bead of sweat slipped behind her ear, and for the first time since Shed barked the order, her voice lost its certainty. "Sir, you can't threaten the crew," she managed, but the sentence wavered. "We have procedures. There are policies." Marcus didn't even look at her. His gaze had fixed on something far beyond the cabin, a point in the distance only he could see. A clarity sharpened his expression, the kind that wasn't fueled by anger, but by principle, dignity, boundaries. The kind of clarity a person reaches only after a lifetime of being expected to swallow disrespect and behave gently in rooms that never expected him to belong. Passengers watched with an unsettling mixture of fascination and guilt. Some shifted uncomfortably, suddenly seeing their own faces reflected in the mirrored trim of the overhead bins, the faces of bystanders who had said nothing. The man who'd taken Marcus' seat reclined further, pretending to scroll his phone, though his thumb hovered frozen above the screen, his jaw clenched. His earlier confidence had shrunk into something tight and brittle. A faint rattle from the beverage cart echoed through the aisle, the metal trembling from the vibration of the taxiway, but it felt like it was reacting to Marcus. The teen who had been filming lowered his phone just an inch. "Why does it feel like we're in a movie?" he whispered to his sister. Because everyone could sense the imbalance, the wrongness, and the way the air was recalibrating around one man. Marcus finally blinked once, slow, deliberate, and turned his head toward the lead attendant. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. The cabin stopped breathing. Emily," she stammered. "I'm the purser on this flight." Marcus nodded, absorbing the information the way a judge might absorb testimony. "Emily," he said, "you assumed, you didn't verify, and you disrespected me publicly." Her throat bobbed. "Sir, if I offended, you didn't offend," Marcus said. His tone remained calm, controlled. "You revealed." A murmur rolled through row 1, soft as static. Someone closed their laptop, someone else tucked away a newspaper. Every small noise sounded like a confession. Marcus continued, "You revealed what you believe people like me should look like, even when we're exactly where we paid to be." Emily flushed. Her jaw worked, searching for a defense that didn't exist. The second attendant, the one with the tablet, stepped in. "Sir, please, let's not escalate. We can still accommodate you. There's an open seat in premium economy, a very comfortable one." That word, accommodate, landed like a slap made of cotton. Soft, insulting, familiar. Marcus' eyes sharpened. "You want me to move again?" "It's the best we can do," she insisted. "For whom?" he asked. No one answered. The engines outside roared as the plane taxied closer to the runway. The cabin lights flickered for a microsecond, a normal aircraft function but timed like punctuation. Marcus lifted his phone. Emily flinched. Not dramatically, but enough for everyone to catch it. Enough for the man in row 3 to whisper, "She knows she messed up." Marcus didn't smile. He didn't taunt. He simply unlocked his screen and tapped into a secure message thread labeled, "Ellington Ops Priority." Channel rows of encrypted messages filled the screen like marching soldiers. Marcus typed nothing yet. Instead, he looked around the cabin at every watching face, every camera lens, every uneasy expression, and spoke softly, with a steady resonance that seemed to fill the narrow space. "You wanted me to be quiet," he said. "You wanted me small. You wanted me to disappear into the back of this plane so you wouldn't have to examine yourselves." Emily swallowed, hard. Marcus stepped forward, his silhouette framed by the cool overhead lights. "I don't disappear," he said. And with a single exhale, calm, measured, absolute, he pressed send. The message delivered itself with a soft chime, barely audible, yet it sliced through the cabin louder than any shout. Every passenger felt it, even if they couldn't hear it. A shift, a break. like the moment right before a fuse finds flame. Marcus lowered his phone, not triumphant, not dramatic, just certain. His stillness felt heavier than the weight of the airplane itself. 3 seconds passed, then 5. Then, the cabin intercom crackled. At first, no one looked up. Passengers assumed it was the routine announcement before takeoff, but the tone wasn't routine. It carried a tremor, a forced calm stretched tight over panic. "Purser Emily, report to the flight deck immediately." The captain's voice, pressed flat, almost clipped. He didn't use titles like that unless something was very wrong. Emily's spine stiffened. She shot one quick glance at Marcus, a glance filled with questions she couldn't articulate, and hurried toward the cockpit. Her footsteps were too fast for confidence, too slow for innocence. When the cockpit door shut behind her, the cabin filled with whispers. What's happening? Is he someone important? Why did the captain call her? That message he sent, did he report her? The man in Marcus' stolen seat shifted uncomfortably. For the first time, he seemed to question the victory Head claimed. His smirk had evaporated, sweat collected at his temples. Across the aisle, an older woman leaned toward her husband. "That man is not ordinary," she murmured. "Look at him. Hez too calm, too deliberate." Her husband nodded, uneasy. Feels like he's not the one who should be worried. Meanwhile, behind the locked cockpit door, muffled voices rose. Emily's was frantic, fragmented, leaking into the cabin in broken syllables. "But Captain, I didn't know." "No, he didn't say. How was I supposed to?" "Sir, you can't be serious." Then a sharp, unmistakable command. "Step out. Now." The door opened. Hard. Emily stepped back into the cabin with the complexion of a person who had just been told their future had been rewritten without their consent. She didn't return to Marcus. She didn't approach her crew. She simply stood there, frozen mid-aisle, gripping the edge of a seat as though the ground underneath had tilted. The second attendant approached her. "Emily? What?" The cockpit intercom boomed again. "All flight attendants prepare for immediate internal review. Stand by for operations. Immediate internal review." Passengers who worked in corporate settings stiffened at the phrase. It was code. Not for safety, not for turbulence, but for consequences. Marcus didn't move, didn't blink, didn't indulge the spectacle. He simply stepped back into the space near row 2, reclaiming the physical territory that had been taken from him moments earlier. But he didn't sit, not yet. His presence filled the aisle like a quiet verdict. The second attendant, suddenly pale, approached him with caution. "Sir, can I ask, who exactly did you contact?" Marcus didn't answer. He looked past her, toward the front of the cabin, where the captain had emerged. The door closed behind him with a heavy thud. Every conversation died. The captain scanned the cabin slowly, his gaze landing on Marcus last and staying there. He walked down the aisle deliberately, stopping just inches from him. "Mr. Ellington," the captain said quietly, "operations received your directive." The cabin erupted in small gasps. Ellington. The name meant nothing to some, but everything to others. A man who built engines that powered half the planes in the sky. A man airlines negotiated with, carefully, respectfully, cautiously. A man whose signature could shut down entire fleets. Marcus inclined his head once. The captain continued, voice tight with formal restraint. "We were not aware you were on this flight. If we had been." "That's the problem, Captain," Marcus said softly. "You weren't aware of anything." Passengers shifted, guilt creeping in like fog. The captain swallowed, then turned toward his crew. "Both of you," he said to Emily and the second attendant, "remain at the front. Do not engage passengers. Do not speak unless addressed." Emily's knees nearly buckled. Marcus finally moved to sit not in economy, not in a downgraded seat, but in the seat that had always been his. The white passenger occupying it stood so fast his knee hit the tray table. Sorry, he stammered. I didn't know. I didn't realize." Marcus didn't spare him a glance. He sat, settling into the seat with quiet, unshakable authority. The cabin exhaled. A storm had been set in motion, and nobody knew where the lightning would strike next. As Marcus settled into the seat that had always been his, the cabin finally breathed again, uneven, shallow, like a room waking from a collective hallucination. But beneath the regained order, something deeper stirred. Recognition. Not of his name. Not yet. But of a presence that didn't bend. The passengers watched him with a new kind of silence, one shaped by respect they hadn't offered and regret they didn't know how to hide. "Row 3 seconds," teenager whispered. "Dude." "Ellington. Why does that sound familiar?" His sister blinked. "Wait, isn't that, like, engines? Or airplanes? Something big?" But before the whispers could weave themselves into clarity, the story behind the name began to unfurl, not through exposition, but through the way Marcus held himself. A posture built from a life of storms weathered and storms commanded. Marcus Ellington didn't come from legacy. He built one. He was born on the south edge of Atlanta, in a neighborhood where cracked sidewalks held more stories than playgrounds. His mother held 2 jobs, his father held hope together with stubborn pride. Marcus learned early that dignity was not a gift, it was a discipline. At 12, he dismantled his first engine. At 15, he built one from scrap. By 18, he had already designed a combustion model advanced enough to get him a scholarship his family never could have afforded. University halls didn't welcome him. Not at first. Brilliance confused people who expected him to be ordinary. Confidence intimidated those who mistook his quiet for humility. But he had something more dangerous than talent. He had precision. Every degree, every patent, every breakthrough etched a new line in the architecture of his future. At 31, he founded Ellington Aeronautics, a startup built in a warehouse with a leaky roof and a staff of 5. 3 of those paychecks bounced in the first 6 months, but the Marcus idea held. He wasn't chasing aircraft. He was chasing autonomy. His engine designs ran cleaner, quieter, faster. His safety algorithms saved airlines billions. His efficiency systems rewired global flight logistics. And the world noticed. By 45, Ellington Aeronautics powered aircraft across 3 continents, supplied essential systems to 12 major airlines, and held contracts so critical that a single breach could ground fleets and crash markets. Still, Marcus kept his face out of the news, rejected interview requests, and refused to walk red carpets at tech summits. Publicity had never protected him. Competence had. And competence, real, undeniable, didn't need applause. What mattered to him was legacy, not profit, not power, but precision and dignity, the 2 currents he believed kept the sky itself flying straight. Yet for all his influence, Marcus moved quietly through the world. He flew economy when he felt like it. He wore suits without the need for labels. He preferred silence over spectacle. People underestimated him for the same reason they had always underestimated men who looked like him. They thought success needed a costume. So when he booked seat 2A, he did so without announcing himself, without notifying the airline's executive team, without revealing the meaning of his last name. But Aunt Bernice, his mother's sister, had taught him something at 16 that he had never forgotten. "Baby, respect ain't something you ask for. It's something they prove they can't take from you." Those words sat beside him now, in the hum of the jet, in the quiet fury of the flight attendants gathering at the front, in the tense posture of the captain still watching him from the aisle. The passengers looked between Marcus and the frozen crew, beginning to grasp the magnitude of the mistake that had been made. Ellington wasn't just a name. It was a gravitational force in the aviation world. And the airline had just insulted the man whose signature kept their engines in the air. Marcus rested his elbows on the armrests, fingers interlaced, eyes forward, calm, not victorious. Because he wasn't here for revenge. He was here for a correction, one that had already begun. The aircraft jolted lightly as it shifted into final taxi position, but the tremor inside the cabin had nothing to do with turbulence. It was human, collective, uneasy. A pressure that settled over every seat like an unseen hand. Marcus sat in 2A, not reclaimed, but restored, his posture relaxed, his breathing even. But the stillness around him betrayed what everyone else felt. Anticipation sharpened into fear. Emily, the purser, stood stiff at the front bulkhead, fingers trembling at her sides. The second attendant had retreated 2 steps behind her, eyes darting toward the cockpit door as though waiting for it to open and deliver a verdict neither of them wanted to face. Passengers remained silent. Phones hovered. The moment held, Marcus lifted his phone again, not dramatically, not as a threat, but as a man executing a responsibility with surgical calm. The screen lit his face in pale blue. A single message thread glowed at the top. Raquel Ellington. Ops 3 dots appeared almost instantly. She was already typing. Marcus didn't hesitate. His message was short, 5 words, no punctuation. Words that didn't raise their voice yet reshaped futures. Pull authorization. Effective now. He hit send. The ripples took less than 30 seconds to arrive. Up front, the captain's tablet chimed so violently he flinched. The cockpit door cracked open again, just enough for him to look out. His face had paled, the kind of pale that came from realizing an entire airline's lifeline was suddenly in jeopardy. He beckoned Emily. She approached like a woman walking toward a sentence. Their whispered exchange wasn't quiet enough. Passengers heard fragments. Contract suspended. Maintenance authority revoked. This flight. This entire fleet. He has the power to. Emily's knees buckled. She gripped a seat back to steady herself. The captain exhaled, then stepped into the aisle fully, as though bracing for impact. His voice was low, controlled only by duty. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began. But Marcus raised a hand just slightly. Just enough. The captain stopped mid-breath. Every eye in the cabin flicked between the two men. Marcus didn't speak to the captain. Not yet. Instead, he addressed Emily, the woman who had humiliated him without hesitation, without thought, without questioning her assumptions. "Emily," he said, voice level, "do you understand what you set in motion?" Her lips parted, but no words came. Her throat tightened around silence. Marcus didn't fill it for her. "You took my seat," he continued, "but more importantly, you took my dignity and treated it like it was negotiable." Her eyes glistened. "Sir, I didn't know who you were." He nodded once. "That's exactly the problem." A man in row 1 dropped his gaze to his lap. A woman 2 rows back closed her phone, ashamed of what Shed recorded minutes earlier. Marcus turned to the captain. "What's the status?" The captain swallowed. "Operations confirmed your directive. Our maintenance permissions from Ellington Aeronautics are suspended pending further review." A hush fell over the cabin so complete it felt like the air had stopped circulating. The captain continued, voice cracking under the weight of consequences that reached far beyond this single flight. "Without those authorizations, our aircraft are grounded. Every one of them." Phones lit up. Notifications pinged. News alerts began blooming across screens like sparks in a dry field. One passenger whispered, This is bigger than us," another murmured. He grounded the airline. The captain looked at Marcus, not pleading, but humbled. "What are your instructions, sir?" Marcus studied him, then shifted his gaze to the 2 flight attendants at the front. Emily's mascara had begun to smudge, her earlier arrogance dissolving into something raw, human. Finally, Marcus spoke. "This isn't about punishment," he said quietly. "It's about standards." He tapped his phone again, typing slowly, deliberately. "Send team, cabin review, full audit." Another message delivered. Another tremor rippled through the cabin. Marcus set the phone on the armrest, hands steady, voice calm. "You wanted me small," he said softly. "But I build the very thing that keeps you in the sky." Emily covered her mouth with her hand, a sob catching in her throat. The captain lowered his head. And somewhere beneath them, far beyond the runway, an entire airline braced for impact. The shift from humiliation to accountability didn't arrive with shouting. It arrived with footsteps. Measured, heavy, coordinated. 3 figures in Navy uniforms appeared at the front of the cabin, operations supervisors, dispatched directly from the terminal before the door could close. Their badges reflected authority that didn't belong to the cabin crew, nor the captain, nor anyone on the plane except the man in 2A. The lead supervisor stepped forward and introduced himself with a quiet, controlled tone. "Mr. Ellington, we received your directive. We're here to begin the audit." A tremor passed through the passengers, a collective realization that this wasn't retaliation. This was protocol. Marcus inclined his head. "Proceed." The supervisor turned to the captain first. "Per Ellington Aeronautics Policy 14B, all operational responsibilities must be submitted for verification." "Captain, need your documentation." The captain didn't argue. He removed his hat, handed over his tablet, and stepped aside like a man surrendering a crown. Next came the flight attendants. "Purser Emily," the supervisor said. "Please step forward." Her hands shook so violently she had to clasp them together to hide it. She stepped into the aisle, eyes glossy, breathing shallow. Passengers watched her not with mockery, but with the dawning weight of witnessing someone realize the price of a moment they thought was harmless. The supervisor continued, clinical and precise. "You are temporarily relieved of duty pending investigation. Please surrender your badge." Emily's fingers faltered as she unpinned the badge from her uniform. The small metal emblem clinked softly against the supervisor's palm. The faint sound felt like a gavel striking. The second attendant tried to hide behind her colleague, but the supervisor turned to her as well. "And you, Miss Carter, your conduct will also be reviewed." She swallowed. "Sir, I didn't mean it isn't about intent," he said. "It's about standard." Her badge joined Emily's. Two metal emblems, two careers paused in midair, two realizations sinking fast. The supervisor faced Marcus again. "Would you like us to remove them from the aircraft?" Marcus looked at Emily. She couldn't stop trembling. The earlier smugness had evaporated, replaced by the raw, exposed truth of someone who had never imagined her authority could be questioned. Marcus' voice was steady. "They will remain. Let them see how accountability works." A ripple of shock passed through the cabin because his words weren't cruel. They were intentional, measured, educative. The supervisor nodded. "Understood." He tapped his headset. "Operational report. Cabin reassigned. Secondary crew en route." Marcus leaned back in his seat, posture calm, expression unreadable. He wasn't reveling in their fear. He wasn't performing for the crowd. He was simply enforcing the standards he had built an entire industry around. Behind him, the man who had taken his seat earlier wiped sweat from his brow. He avoided Marcus' gaze entirely, his voice cracking as he whispered to no one, "I didn't know." From row 4, a woman exhaled shakily. "All this, because they judged him." Another person murmured, "No, because they acted like judgment was their right." The replacement crew arrived, 3 fresh-faced attendants who entered with straight backs and wide, uncertain eyes. They had clearly been briefed. Their posture carried respect that wasn't fear-based but principled. The new lead attendant approached Marcus first. "Mr. Ellington, welcome aboard. May I bring you anything?" His nod was quiet appreciation, not entitlement. "Water," he said, "and dignity in this cabin." "Yes, sir." The supervisors continued their audit up and down the aisle, scanning documents, confirming protocols, interviewing passengers, making notes. It wasn't chaos. It was procedure, the kind of smooth, silent storm that only happened when real power moved without noise. Emily and her colleagues stood stiff at the front, witnessing every step, every correction, every professional motion of a process designed to expose what arrogance tried to hide. Passengers watched them, not vindictively, but with the sobering understanding that they had been part of the scene, some as witnesses, some as enablers, some as silent accomplices. And Marcus sat at the center, not triumphant, but resolute. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't insulted anyone. He hadn't demanded revenge. He had simply required the truth to be seen. The truth that respect isn't optional. The truth that power isn't loud. The truth that accountability doesn't need permission. As the supervisors finished their initial sweep, one of them leaned toward Marcus. "Sir," he said quietly, "Operations is asking how far you want this to go." Marcus looked from Emily to the aisle, to every watching face. Then he spoke, his voice calm enough to still the entire cabin. "Far enough," he said, "that it never happens again." The cabin hadn't moved an inch down the runway, yet the world outside was already shifting. It started with a single vibration, one phone, then another, then another. Notifications pulsed through the rows like a heartbeat picking up pace. The teen in row 3 gasped first. "Yo, it's everywhere, already." He turned his screen toward his sister. A trending tag glowed in bold. "Number Ellington on board, number VIPS seat incident number." Flying while black posts flooded in angles captured from half the passengers, fragments of Emily's tone. The white passenger pushing past Marcus. The look on Marcus' face when he finally sat down. Someone whispered, "It's gone global in 10 minutes." It wasn't just viral. It was a reckoning. Across the cabin, executives and business travelers scrolled their feeds with dawning dread. The story had leaped across platforms like wildfire catching dry brush. A journalist at the back whispered into her phone, "Yes, I'm on the flight." "No, you don't understand, the man they profiled is Ellington." "Yes, that Ellington." Marcus didn't react to the buzz around him. He didn't scan headlines or check comments. His posture remained composed, as if Head not only expected the aftermath but understood its velocity. The replacement crew moved with a professionalism so precise it bordered on reverence. The new lead attendant returned with his water, hands steady. "We're ready for final checks, sir." Marcus nodded. "Proceed." But the aircraft didn't move. The captain received another alert on his tablet. His eyes widened, not with surprise, but with recognition of what consequence looks like in real time. He approached Marcus again, choosing his words with surgical caution. "Sir, corporate headquarters is asking for clarification." Marcus looked up. "On? Your directive. They want to know if the suspension applies to this flight only or the entire fleet." The cabin inhaled sharply. A man in business class muttered, "He could end them." "Right here." Emily flinched, the reality settling like ice in her chest. She had thought the humiliation ended with losing a seat. She hadn't understood it was the first domino. The operations supervisor stepped closer. "Sir, we've confirmed. Multiple major carriers are monitoring the situation. Investors are reacting." Passengers looked at each other, stunned. Headlines were evolving by the second. "Airline under audit, after VIP dispute industry shaken." "Ellington Aeronautics pulls authorizations, what it means for safety." A single text from Black CEO freezes multi-billion-dollar operations. The magnitude hit the aircraft like a silent shockwave. One wrong moment, one assumption, one decision to humiliate. And now the entire aviation sector was watching the fallout. Marcus folded his hands. "Tell headquarters this. Standards are not suggestions. If they want authorization restored, they will correct the environment that allowed this." The captain nodded, nearly bowing. "Yes, sir." The operations supervisors relayed it instantly. Emily grabbed the headrest in front of her. She looked like she might collapse. The second attendant wiped tears silently, unable to hide the reality unraveling around her. Passengers shifted uncomfortably now, not because they feared Marcus' power, but because they recognized the ugliness they had allowed in silence. An older man cleared his throat. "Mr. Ellington, for what it's worth. I'm sorry. We all should have said something." Marcus didn't look at him. Accountability doesn't begin with apologies. It begins with awareness. His voice wasn't cruel, but it pierced deeper than accusation. Outside the window, a ground vehicle approached, not airport staff, but corporate representatives in dark suits, moving with urgency. Even from inside, passengers could see the tension in their shoulders. The airline wasn't just reacting, it was bracing. The supervisor's headset crackled. "Mr. Ellington, corporate is requesting a direct line with you." Marcus nodded once. "I'll speak with them after takeoff." The supervisor hesitated. "Sir, they want to speak now." He looked out the window, then back to the trembling flight crew. "No," he said. "Now, they wait." Passengers stared, stunned, not because of arrogance, but because they were witnessing something society rarely shows. A black man refusing to shrink. A black CEO choosing dignity over comfort. A leader demonstrating that justice doesn't need volume, only precision. Marcus leaned back, eyes forward, calm as the engines began to hum again. The aftershocks weren't over, they were only beginning. The engines finally pressed forward, a low rumble vibrating through the cabin as the aircraft eased from its long standstill. But the movement felt symbolic now, like the plane wasn't just leaving the gate, but leaving behind the arrogance that had infected the aisle minutes before. Marcus sat in 2A with the stillness of a man who had repaired something. Not the flight, not the staff, but the balance of the moment itself. His presence filled the space without effort, not loud, not punishing, just undeniable. Passengers who had recorded earlier now lowered their phones, unwilling to turn this into entertainment anymore. The digital frenzy outside the aircraft continued to spiral upward, but inside the cabin a strange reverence settled. The replacement crew adjusted service carts quietly. Their movements were crisp but gentle, built from a respect that didn't fear punishment, only falling short. Emily remained at the front, her uniform slightly wrinkled from the way she clutched it. Her earlier authority had drained, leaving behind something raw, understanding. Not because she had lost her badge, but because she had seen herself. Truly seen herself for the first time in a long time. She stepped carefully toward Marcus. "Sir," her voice fractured under the weight of everything she hadn't meant to say, everything Shed meant to deny, everything she now couldn't hide. I don't know how to justify what I did." Marcus didn't look up at once. He let the admission settle. Let her stand in it without trying to escape through excuses. "There's nothing to justify," he said quietly. "Only something to correct." Her breath shook. "The audit. Will I?" "That isn't my decision," Marcus said. "But dignity, yours and mine, is something you decide every day." "Begin there," Emily nodded, tears refusing to be blinked away. She backed up, not dismissed but released, a woman reshaped by consequence, not crushed by it. Across the aisle, the man who had taken Marcus' seat earlier stared straight ahead, haunted. Head tried to offer an apology twice. Both times the words collapsed before reaching his throat. Not because Marcus demanded silence, but because the man finally realized the apology wasn't for Marcus. It was for the person he had been. The captain approached next, hat in hand, humility thick in his posture. "Mr. Ellington, corporate has complied with your terms. The corrective teams are assembled. Full retraining will begin immediately." Marcus nodded once. Good. He didn't lecture. He didn't elevate himself. He simply allowed the weight of his expectations to settle. The captain exhaled deeply, relieved. "We're also issuing a fleet-wide memo before we land. If there's anything else you require, fly safely," Marcus said. "Standards begin there." It was both an answer and a directive, simple, profound, transformative. The captain bowed subtly before returning to the cockpit. A few passengers, emboldened by the shift, approached Marcus, not with praise, but with respect. A woman in business attire cleared her throat. "Your restraint today, it taught us something. Not just the crew, all of us." A man beside her nodded. "Most people with your power would have yelled, demanded, humiliated them back." Marcus' gaze held steady. "If you need to injure someone to prove you're powerful, then you're not powerful. You're insecure." The words landed with the weight of truth, soft and final. Outside the window, the city below grew distant as the aircraft climbed into smooth, open sky. Sunlight spilled across the cabin in bands of warmth that felt almost symbolic, like the universe had chosen its side. A replacement attendant approached with a warm towel. She placed it gently on Marcus' armrest, speaking with a sincerity untouched by fear. "Thank you for letting us correct things, sir." Marcus offered her a quiet nod. "Thank you for choosing the correction." She smiled small, real, and stepped away. The flight leveled. The seatbelt sign dimmed. Passengers uncurled from stiffness like a collective exhale. And Marcus reached into his bag, not for his phone, not for documents, but for an old leather-bound notebook, the kind worn soft from years of travel. Inside the front cover was a name written in gentle pen strokes. "Bernice Ellington. Teach them with your walk, not your volume." He pressed a hand to the page, honoring the woman who taught him that dignity isn't a reaction, it's a discipline. Below her name, Marcus scribbled a small note, a reminder to himself more than a declaration to anyone else. "Correct quietly, impact loudly." The cabin lights softened as the plane settled into cruise altitude. A strange peace filled the aisles, not because the drama had passed, but because something necessary had happened, something rare, something overdue. A black man forced out of his seat had reclaimed more than a place in the cabin. He had reclaimed the standard of what respect should look like at 35,000 feet. And as the clouds parted below, a simple truth settled over everyone aboard. Power doesn't need noise. Justice doesn't need anger. And dignity, once defended, teaches the entire room how to stand. Part 9 ends here.